They said no one should go near the river after sunset, not because of crocodiles, not because of spirits you could see, but because of the ones you couldn't. In the village of Obialo, the river had a name people no longer spoke aloud. The elders would pause before mentioning it, their voices lowering, as though the water itself might be listening. And yet, every single night, at the same hour juste, after the last cooking fires died down and the moon took its place in the sky, a woman walked toward it, alone, barefoot, and naked. Her name was Amara. By day, she looked like any other woman in the village, quiet, reserved, with eyes that carried a sadness too deep for someone her age. She sold smoked fish in the market, spoke only when necessary, and never stayed long in conversations. But at night, everything changed. The first time anyone noticed was by accident. A young boy named Kelechi had followed his goat too far into the bush. By the time he found it, the sky had turned purple and the forest had begun to whisper. On his way back, he passed near the river bank and froze. There, in the pale glow of the moon, stood Amara. Her body shimmered faintly, as though the light itself clung to her skin. She stepped slowly into the water, her movements deliberate, almost ritualistic. The river, usually restless at night, became eerily still around her. Kelechi didn't breathe. She dipped herself beneath the surface once, twice, three times, and then she spoke. Not loudly, not clearly, but the sound carried. It wasn't a language he understood, and it wasn't meant for human ears. He ran home screaming. By morning, the story had spread like wildfire. She is possessed. She is a witch. She has made a pact with the river spirits. The elders gathered, their faces tight with concern, but no one confronted her because deep down they remembered something. Amara had not always been this way. Years earlier, she had been the brightest girl in Obialo. Laughter followed her like music. Men admired her, women adored her, and children trailed behind her as if she carried sunshine in her pockets. She was engaged to Chinedu, a strong, kind man who had returned from the city to marry her. Their wedding was meant to be the biggest the village had seen in decades. But 3 nights before the ceremony, something happened, something no one could explain. Amara had gone to fetch water at dusk. She never came back that night. Search parties combed the forest with lanterns. Her mother wept until her voice gave out. Chinedu refused to sleep, pacing like a man losing his mind. At dawn, they found her by the river, unconscious, alive, but changed. When she woke, she didn't recognize anyone, not her mother, not her fiancé, not even herself. For days, she said nothing. Then, on the seventh night, she disappeared again, and that was when the ritual began. Every night since then, she walked to the river, and every night she bathed, naked under the moon, speaking to something unseen. The villagers tried everything. They called the local healer, who burned herbs and whispered prayers until his voice cracked. He left shaking, refusing to return. They brought a priest from a neighboring town. He sprinkled holy water, recited scriptures, but the moment Amara stepped into the river, his words seemed to dissolve into the night. Even Chinedu tried. One evening, he followed her. Hidden behind the trees, he watched the woman he loved walk into the water as if drawn by an invisible force. Amara, he called softly. She didn't respond. He stepped closer. Amara, please, come back. That's when she turned and smiled. But it wasn't her smile. It was something else wearing her face. Chinedu stumbled back, his heart pounding. Do not call her, the voice said. though her lips barely moved. She belongs to us now. He never followed her again, and within a month, he left the village. Years passed. The story faded into uneasy acceptance. People avoided the river at night. Children were warned. Life continued. But Amara remained, trapped in a ritual no one understood, until the night everything changed. It began with a stranger. He arrived just before sunset, dusty, tired, and carrying little more than a small bag slung over his shoulder. He introduced himself as Ikenna, a traveler passing through. The villagers welcomed him cautiously, offering food and a place to sleep. But as night fell, he noticed something strange. No one stepped outside. Doors were shut early, windows barred, and an unspoken tension filled the air. "Why is everyone hiding?" he asked his host. The old man hesitated, then sighed. "It is not hiding," he said quietly. "It is survival." That night, Ikenna didn't sleep. He watched. And when the hour came, he saw her, Amara, walking toward the river. He followed. Not out of recklessness, but curiosity. Something about her movements, her silence, it didn't feel like madness. It felt like a call. When she reached the river bank, she paused. For a moment, she stood completely still. Then, slowly, she removed the cloth wrapped around her body and stepped into the water. Ikenna should have looked away, but he didn't. Because what he saw wasn't something meant to shame, it was something meant to be witnessed. Her body wasn't exposed in vulnerability, it was marked. Faint patterns shimmered across her skin, like symbols carved in light. They pulsed as she entered the river. Alive, she dipped beneath the surface once, twice, 3 times. Then the whispers began. Ikenna stepped closer, carefully, quietly. He listened, and unlike Kelechi, he understood. It wasn't a curse, not entirely. It was a binding. The river had taken her, but not by force, by agreement. Long ago, before the village was built, the river had been worshipped. Offerings were made, promises kept, but over time the ritual stopped, the respect faded, and the river grew restless. It began to take first animals, then people. Until one night, Amara had come to fetch water, and the river spoke to her, offered her a choice: one life or many. She chose the village. The ritual wasn't punishment, it was payment. Every night, she returned to fulfill her end of the bargain, to keep the river satisfied, to keep it from claiming others. But there was a condition, one that had not yet been met. As Amara stood waist deep in the water, her voice rose clearer now. "Release me." The river stirred. For the first time, the surface rippled violently. "Not yet," the unseen voice answered. "The balance is not restored." Ikena stepped forward. "Then let it be restored tonight." The water stilled. Amara froze. Slowly, she turned. This time, her eyes were different. They were hers. "Leave," she whispered. "You don't understand." "I do," Ikenna said, "and I know what it wants." He stepped into the river. The cold bit into his skin, but he didn't stop. "Every binding requires an offering," he continued. "But it doesn't have to be her." The river roared. "Another will not suffice." Ikenna shook his head. "Not another life." He reached into his bag and pulled out a small carved object, an ancient symbol, older than the village, older than the river's claim. "This was given to me for a reason," he said. "A key for a lock like this." He plunged it into the water. The river exploded. Light burst upward, blinding and violent. The air trembled as though the world itself were holding its breath. Amara screamed, not in pain, but release. The markings on her skin burned brighter, then began to fade. The voice rose one last time, furious. You break what was sworn. No, Ikenna replied. I complete it. And then, silence. The water stilled, the light vanished, and Amara collapsed. When she woke, it was morning. For the first time in years, she was not by the river. She was in the village, wrapped in cloth, surrounded by people. Amara, her mother whispered. Tears filled her eyes. Mama, the curse was broken, but Ikenna was gone. No one saw him leave. No one knew where he went. Only the small, empty cabin remained at the river bank. And the river, it never called again. To this day, the people of Obialo still speak of the woman who bathed in the river every night. But now they tell the full story, not of a curse, but of a sacrifice, a choice. And the night a stranger changed everything. Some laws say if you go to that river under a full moon, you can still see faint markings shimmer beneath the surface, not as a warning, but as a reminder. Some bonds are not meant to last forever, and some are meant to be broken.